Well, good evening. It's cold today. Boy, oh boy. Whew. Not super cold. It's only like 2 or 3 degrees, but it's just windy and damp. Anyways, damp, that gets me thinking. I was talking to a lady today about humidity in her chicken house. There's our chicken houses right there. And the concern is she had like 72% humidity in her chicken house and wondering how she could lower that humidity by adding pine shavings or by adding like an absorbent type material. And the easy question is, what are you doing right now? So she had a ventilation fan on that was to pull moist air out of the coop, but she also had a window cracked. One thing with that, always check what's the actual exterior relative humidity. So here today, right now, it's like 78%. If you're pulling air out of your chicken house and then in through an auxiliary window, all you're doing is pulling all that outside humidity in and then throwing it right out with that fan. And it doesn't matter what kind of humidity you got on the floor of your chicken house, you're never going to get it down lower than what the outside relative humidity is. So keep that in mind. One thing you can do though is add lots and lots of pine shavings. That's something we use quite regularly. We use the deep litter method. So we catch all their manure inside the pine shavings and then just rotate it. Actually, yesterday I did this. You can go back, watch yesterday's video, and you'll see how that was done. Just a quick, 5 minutes in with a manure fork, stir everything up and get it all, oxygenated, aerated, and let it breathe. The type of pine shave, or sorry, not the type of pine shavings, the type of shavings actually makes a big difference. So we use pine shavings because they're readily available, they're cheap. Some folks want to use cedar shavings because they're aromatic and they take away any kind of bad odors. They're in the chicken house. But because cedar is an aromatic wood, a lot of the oils that are in that can be harmful to the respiratory system of the birds, as well as irritable on their skin. So avoid cedar shavings. The other question was about absorbent type materials. So this is more things like cat litter than more natural products. The thing with cat litter is if it's in the coop, the chickens are going to peck at it, right? They're gonna. Now, you wouldn't want your chickens to eat cat litter, and cat litter is like just 50% dust. So it's really hard for them if they get it up into their lungs and stuff. It's a huge breathing hazard. There are other absorbent materials that contain types of clays or even diatomaceous earth. Very similarly, they will have a poor, a poor reaction on their respiratory health. So keep that in mind. Honestly, add more shavings, get it dried up in there. If you're noticing areas where there's continual moisture or there's excess moisture, scoop that stuff out, throw it in your compost pile, and just add more dry shavings in that area. So yesterday when we got home, I actually noticed we had a blown breaker in the shop, and that was the same breaker that's controlling the water heaters for our lambs. So we rigged up a second pen with a second water bucket with a second water heater, and it was just too much draw on that system. So right now it's like 2 or 3 degrees, so it's above freezing. So I'm gonna get that thing unplugged because it's running whether or not it's below zero or if it's above zero. So get that unplugged, reduce the demand on the electrical system here. And I'm gonna figure out where I can string a cord from on a different circuit. It's been cold here, but check this out. We got a little bit of warm weather, has melted a little bit of snow here, and the chickens are spending their time at the salad bar. Chickens love grass. In fact, they'll get like 20% of their diet off of grass. So on colder days like this, if there's a little bit of grass showing, that's where the chickens are gonna spend their day. So I'm here in the chicken house now, and you can see this is the deep litter we have on the floor. You should be able to put your hand in here and pull it out. And you might feel there's a slight bit of humidity in there, but not so much that I would call it damp. But a little bit of moisture is fine because that helps keep the dust down, helps all the bacterial work to break down some of the material in here. But you also don't want it too dry because that creates a bunch of dust and whatnot, makes it harder for the chickens to breathe. So we stirred all this up yesterday, and as you can see, the chickens, it doesn't really matter where you shovel it, the chickens are going to come in here and work until and spread that stuff back out as they need to. So the other thing with that blown breaker we had, we've got this water here which got heat trace wrapped around it, and it's all insulated and taped up, and that breaker powers this water. Thankfully it didn't freeze. We just rigged this up a couple weeks ago, and we haven't had any super cold weather yet. We've had a few days where it's been minus 10, minus 12 degrees Celsius. So it's cold enough to be concerned. It's cold enough that it gets below freezing here in the coop. And this has stayed defrosted. So we're hoping when it gets to minus 30 that it still stays defrosted. But that's just something I'll have to be conscientious of, is how much stuff I got plugged in on that system so I don't overload it. So I just slipped out here to feed the dogs and get everything ready for tomorrow morning. Anyways, today at work I heard a dirty, filthy rumor. An absolute dirty, filthy rumor. A coworker said to me, he's like, I heard you were getting out of chickens. Boy, I tell you, there's some fake news out there, but this one really takes the biscuit. No, in fact, actually, we're probably prepping to get a whole bunch more chickens in the spring. We're just not getting any more over the course of the winter because it's a bad time to start, raising chicks and stuff when the weather is really, not in a good way, because it really only takes one power outage and all your chicks freeze to death. That's not a good thing. So there'll be no more new chicks over the course of winter, but first thing in the spring, boy, yeah, we'll be ramping up more layer chicks, and probably a whole bunch more meat birds. Probably looking to do an order of about 50 meat birds, and raise them in our chicken tractor, our pasture raised poultry. That was fantastic this summer. It was a lot of work, but it was fantastic. And the quality of meat, actually we had that chicken for supper tonight. It was the most delicious chicken I've ever eaten in my entire life. So yeah, no worries. We're not getting out of the chicken business anytime soon. I'm not getting out of the tea business anytime soon either. So I'm gonna head inside, have myself a cinnamon bun and a cup of tea. I hope you have a fantastic evening. We'll see you tomorrow.